Hello dear CAT aspirants, welcome to another video from T.I.M.E, the test prep experts. This video is part 2 of our reading comprehension video, the chicken or egg question. If you have not watched part 1 yet, please do go and watch that part before you watch this one, okay, so that you know what happened to the chicken and egg. So, in part 1, we had warned you that there is a little twist in the tail. That is what we are going to talk about today. Before that, let us do a little recap of what we discussed in part 1. Now, the chicken or egg question that we dealt with was a question that we get very frequently from all our CAT students. That is, when we have a reading comprehension passage with questions in front of us, how do we go about it? Where to begin? Do we read the entire passage first and then deal with the questions? Or do we look at each question first and then try to find the answer to that question without reading the passage completely? We discussed this question in great detail and we came to a consensus that this is not a chicken or egg question. This question has a conclusive answer. You need to read the passage first. However direct a question may be, you need to read the passage first in CAT reading comprehension. Please do watch that video again to know why we came to this conclusion. Okay. Now, so we have accepted that we need to read the passage first. If that is so, what is the problem? What is the twist in the tail? The twist comes in the form of a challenge, and that is balancing speed and comprehension. Okay. On the one hand, you need to read the entire passage before answering the questions. On the other hand, there is a major time constraint. Now, try to think of a newspaper editorial. I hope all of you have been reading newspapers regularly. So, try to think of a typical newspaper editorial. Okay, it is around 400 to 500 words long. We are not talking of the big article that appears in the middle page of the middle page. Typically in Indian newspapers, the editorial is in the left-hand margin of the middle page. Okay, and you know the kind of language they use, the kind of topics that are discussed there. So imagine such an article of about 500 words. Now tell me, how many minutes will you take to read and comprehend such an article? Have you thought of your answer? Most of you would give me a figure somewhere between 5 to 10 minutes. Am I right? Some of you may be much faster. Some of you may think you are a little slower. Typically, the answer we get is between 5 to 10. So, let us say the average is around 7 minutes. Around 7 minutes to read a passage of about 500 words. Now, if we look at the CAT pattern, you know that each of the 3 sections in CAT has 40 minutes. You get 40 minutes for each of VARC, Quant and DILR, right? So, for now we are only talking about RC. So, let us keep aside the VA questions. There are 8 VA questions. Let us give at least 8 minutes to these questions. Okay. So, VA section, we give 8 minutes. So, what is remaining? We have 32 minutes for RC questions. Now, in CAT, we have 4 passages with 4 questions each. Now, it's a different thing that you may not answer all the questions, you may not attempt all the passages, but ideally, you should go through all the passages, you should look at all the questions and then decide what you want to answer, right? So, you have 4 passages with 4 questions each. Each passage is about 500 words. So, for this you have 32 minutes, which means that for one passage with 4 questions, you have 8 minutes. Let us say 8 to 10 minutes approximately, because yes, in CAT with negative marking and all, you don't need to do each and every question. So, the maximum time you can afford for one RC is about 10 minutes. Now, one more question to you. If you have a passage of about 500 words and you have 4 questions based on the passage, and if the options are very, very close, like we saw in part 1 of this video, where will you spend more time? On reading the passage or on answering the questions? I mean, on the initial reading of the passage or on answering the questions? If you said reading the passage, my question to you is, how many marks do you get for just reading the passage? However thoroughly you may read it, how many marks do you get? 0 marks. Okay. Now, that is the challenge here. Okay. On the one hand, you need to read the passage. On the other hand, the crux of the exercise lies in answering the questions with extremely close options. Hence, you need to finish the initial reading of the passage super quickly so that you can focus on answering the questions. Then as you read each question, you can go back to the passage. You may need to revisit the passage multiple times. So, ideally, you should not take more than 2 to 2.5 minutes for finishing the passage. The typical passage in CAT is about 500 words, which means that your reading speed should be at least 200 to 250 words per minute. Now, for an average non-native speaker of English, like all of us, the average reading speed is about 100 words per minute. Okay, so we are talking of doubling your reading speed. It is not such a big deal. It might look like a lot, but if you follow the right tactics, if you adopt the right tactics, then it is something that is attainable. Of course, those who are readers already, avid readers, may already have a reading speed of 300 to 400 words per minute. Okay, so this is for everybody else. And for those who have a good reading speed, you still need to focus on comprehension, accuracy, etc. So there is a challenge for everyone, but a very challenge that all of us can handle. Okay, now let us look at the other part of the let us look at how to go about handling this challenge. So what we need to do is we need to balance speed on the one hand and comprehension on the other, right? Comprehension, because only then will you get accuracy. And if you don't have speed, you may not even manage to reach the questions within the given time. So you need to balance these two. I am going to do a super quick demo of how to balance speed and accuracy. I have a little excerpt from a CAT type passage here. Okay. Now, in CAT, very often students say the passages are so heavy, so we do not understand anything. Then how do you expect us to read fast? See, if you try to understand each and everything in the passage, you will not reach anywhere. It is about fast reading, yes, but it is also about smart reading. Okay, you need to be smart in your reading. You don't need to comprehend each and everything, but you need to know what to comprehend. Shall we do a quick demo? Okay, I'm not going to read this word by word. I am going to show you how we would read this in CAT. The tendency to equate freedom with a lack of coercion has a long history and some complex motivations. To equate freedom with lack of force, lack of compulsion. Okay, so that is the tendency. Fine. Freedom equals lack of compulsion. John Stuart Mill, who was much, if you know John Stuart Mill? Well and good. Ideally, you should know all these very famous thinkers, writers, etc. The objective here is not to take a class on this, so I'm not going to explain who these people mentioned in the essay are. The objective is to show you how to do smart reading. Okay, so John Stuart Mill, who was much influenced by Hume's compatibilism. I'm sure nobody has heard, most of you have not heard of compatibilism or of Hume also. It is okay. J.S. Mill was influenced by this theory. Fine. Explicitly states at the beginning of his essay that it is not, it as in this essay, is not going to deal with issues pertaining to the liberty of the will. Think, liberty of the will means free will. Means what? Can you connect it? Lack of coercion. Free will means nobody is forcing you. So, this links to your lack of coercion, right? Make the connection in your mind. Okay, but so his essay is not going to deal with lack of coercion, but instead with civil or social liberty. Okay, at a social societal level. He tells us this as a point of clarification, but as some scholars have suggested, Mill's occasional nods to paternalism in terms of state intervention. Occasional nods means when do you nod? Usually when you agree with something, right? So, Mill's acknowledgement of paternalism. If you don't know paternalism, think paternal means to do with father. Father is a symbol of authority usually. Yes. State intervention. State intervention also shows the authority of the state. So, his acknowledgement of the authority of the state. Belie means mask. His claims to see liberty in purely negative terms, that is as non-coercion. So, on the one hand, J.S. Mill claims that his view of liberty is as non-coercion, non-compulsion. On the other, he occasionally acknowledges the authority of the state. Obviously, when the state intervenes, there is some level of coercion. Fine. Specifically, he acknowledges that certain social goods such as education and free debate are prerequisites for the growth and development of the individual. Please note, I am not explaining this word by word. Okay, I'm showing you how to read it in RC, so please don't say she's not explaining anything. This is a demo of how to read. Yeah. So, some certain social goods are prerequisites for the growth and development of the individual according to the inward forces which make them a living thing. If you didn't understand that, it is absolutely fine. However, you should not miss social goods. Social goods here is an allusion to socialism. So, certain goods such as education and free debate should be made. Social goods means freely available to the public. That is what J.S. Mill believed. So, making certain goods such as education freely available to the public, is that a lack of coercion or is that state intervention? Obviously, this is state intervention. This is how you connect the dots while reading. Okay? Yeah. He even goes so far as to suggest that the state should fund such education. What education? Free education. For those who can't afford it, although he worries about the state limiting what might be learnt in school. So, on the one hand, he says the state should provide free education to those who cannot afford it. On the other, he is concerned that too much state intervention may affect the content of education. So, that is where he draws the line. Okay. This is one reason why Mill is sometimes held to be at the crossroads between classical or negative liberalism. So, what is negative liberalism? Absence of coercion. And its progressive or positive successor. So, from the passage we can infer that positive liberalism here means state intervention to provide certain essentials. Now, the first para is over. What did we understand from the first para? that J.S. Mill's views on liberty and liberalism are somewhere in between. He took the middle path. On the one extreme is negative liberalism, on the other is positive liberalism, and J.S. Mill took the middle path. If you understand this much, my dear students, that is more than enough, believe me. If you do not understand a particular term like compatibilism means this only, this philosophy of a middle path between state intervention and complete freedom. If you don't understand a particular word, you must be able to infer it from the context. If you still do not understand, at the most, you may not be able to answer a particular question based on it. That is it. Okay. So do not panic. As long as you understand the central idea of each para, you are good to go. So that is what we have learned today. Okay. When you try to balance speed and comprehension, it is essential that you focus on your reading and you try to grasp the central idea of each paragraph as you read. At the same time, do not get distracted by details. Sometimes my students tell me that we try to memorize the details and we waste a lot of time. Do not do that. If at all there is a detail-based question, you can and you must go back to the passage and check. As simple as that. So, don't get distracted by details. Don't get distracted by terms you do not know. Okay, just try to grasp the central idea of each paragraph. At the same time, you must get the tone and purpose of the author accurately. Now, in the previous passage that we read, the author is sort of neutral towards J.S. Mill. Objectively, the author has presented the views of J.S. Mill on liberalism, and the purpose of the author is to show that J.S. Mill was somewhere at the crossroads between two extreme approaches to liberalism. So, as you go, try to sum up the central idea of each paragraph, understand the tone and purpose of the author. So, by the time you finish reading the entire passage, you would have got the essence of the whole passage. That is more than enough in your initial reading, and this is something you can easily attain with practice within the time limit of 2 to 2.5 minutes. Okay, so hope you found this video useful. We'll be back again with more such videos. Keep watching this space. Keep practicing. All the best. Thank you.